This is the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. Going into this Week 2 matchup between the 49ers and the Saints in New Orleans at the Superdome. And speaking of that matchup, we're going to preview it here on the show. And I'm going to bring on Trizzy Trace, former producer of this show, otherwise known as Trace Gerard. He is the host of our Saints channel, Saints Now. And one of my goals this year, mentioned this going into the lead up to Week 1, Niners Seahawks, when we brought on Will Ortner, the host of Seahawks Today, bring on other hosts and other content creators here at Chat Sports. It gives you insight for what to expect from the opposition. It gives you a peek behind enemy lines, and I think the insight is great, but also I think we have some really talented people here at Chat Sports who know ball and love ball. So Trace, I want to start here. This Saints team last year, they get off to a 2-0 start, including a dominant victory over the Dallas Cowboys in Week 2. They beat the Carolina Panthers in Week 1. They scored 40-plus points in each of those games. And then after that, they didn't win a game for about 2 months. Dennis Allen, the head coach, got fired. When I watched this Saints team in Week 1 this year as they took the Cardinals down to the end of that game, nearly tied it at the end of regulation, what stood out to me, how much better of a coach team they were in this new regime with Kellen Moore. It just seemed like a team with more synergy, a team that was more organized, and a team that was much more prepared and fighting for their head coach as compared to what we saw last year when it got sloppy and it got a little bit hectic under Dennis Allen, where things were just falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, I think hectic is a really good word to use. If anything, it's an understatement. I mean, a 7-game losing streak after you start off at a historically high clip on offense is absolutely just unacceptable, which is why he inevitably got fired. And, like you said, going into this year, the New Orleans Saints are much more motivated, and it feels like they have a lot more energy going into this season, led by Kellen Moore, because there's more youth. He's the youngest head coach in the National Football League. He's brought in Brandon Staley, who's a familiar name to Niners fans, as the defensive coordinator to be a guy to modernize the defense and make it a more useful scheme, because traditionally with Dennis Allen, it's been that 4-3 base scheme, but now we're seeing the Saints move to that 3-4 defense with Delonte Taylor playing that star role. So overall, it feels like this team is more motivated. It feels like there's better leadership, and it feels like there's a vision and a plan for this team, because Dennis Allen, I'll say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again, not a head coach, but a hell of a coordinator. And I think that when he got the head coaching job, it just was too much on his plate.
Big storyline for this game, Brock Purdy out. He has a form of turf toe, and so he's going to miss the next 2 to 5 weeks. Mac Jones is in. And in Week 1 against the Seahawks, Brock Purdy was pressured at the highest clip of his NFL career. Nearly 60% of his dropbacks, the Seahawks were able to generate pressure on him, and he was also hit 8 times. So with Mac Jones in there, Trace, Brock Purdy does such a great job of bailing this Niners offensive line out, which for a long time under Kyle Shanahan, they don't really prioritize the offensive line. It has been a pretty average unit. And Brock does such a great job of creating out of structure, improvisationally, being able to create plays and buy time with his feet, with his legs, to either throw the ball downfield or to pick up noteworthy yards and first downs with his feet. Mac Jones, on the other hand, though, he is a statue in the pocket. He is immobile, and that is not a part of his game. Now, he has pretty solid pocket feel and pocket mobility, but he is not going to create plays out of structure. And so the Niners are very familiar with Brandon Staley. Obviously, he wasn't the defensive coordinator for San Francisco last year. It was Nick Sorensen, but Staley helped on that side of the ball, and he did help with some of the development of the defensive backs. When you think about what Staley did when he was the DC with the Rams, Niner fans very familiar with that. What he did as the defensive play caller with the Chargers. He is pretty exotic. He is pretty creative. What did you see from him Week 1, and what's he going to bring to this Week 2 game as the Saints go up against the Niners? Because I know a lot of people have ripped him as the head coach, but he has been a pretty good and successful coordinator because he does get exotic and aggressive at times.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for the New Orleans Saints going into this year was defensively, they were really, really good at getting pressures on the quarterback, but they were not finishing their dinner and turning those pressures into production. So there was a lot of issues actually getting sack production on the Saints defensive line last year. But this year, in week 1, we saw the Saints get 5 sacks for 33 total yards on Kyler Murray, which is really, really impressive considering this was a roster who last year was really, really bad in getting sacks. It is also really impressive considering how mobile and how elusive Kyler Murray is as a quarterback. And so the big difference between the Saints defense this year versus last year is that base 3-4 defense where you have a 5-man front with your 2 stand-up edge rushers. It's allowing guys like Cam Jordan to find a career resurgence, 1.5 sacks last year after I think only having 5.5, or 1.5 in week 1 versus 5 last year. He was much, much better. He looked a lot younger. He was showing that he can still be a good force on the defense. Carl Granderson was also really effective in rushing the passer as well. 1.5 sacks for him and Jordan, so 3 total combined. I think for the Saints defense, as long as they can put pressure on Mac Jones, like you said, he is a statue in the pocket, but a big thing to monitor. Niners fans, Chase Young, y'all know injuries with him. He is right now dealing with a little bit of a calf injury. It's not expected to be long-term, but on the Wednesday injury report, he did not participate. So that's definitely something to monitor. And if he's on the field, I do think the pass rush is better, but even if he's off the field, you still got solid production out of Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson. So the pass rush is the most notably different thing that I noticed in week 1 versus last year.
Good stuff right there. That's the purpose of this preview, to give Niner fans some insight as to what the Saints are all about. To the offensive side of the ball, Kellen Moore, obviously an offensive guy, played quarterback at Boise State, was a backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, an OC for Dallas, OC for the Chargers, OC last year for the Eagles, and a lot of his offenses have ranked within the top 10 as far as total offense goes. And so he's looked at as the hopeful quarterback whisperer for this next generation and new era of New Orleans Saints football. Spencer Rattler, he was a 5-star recruit in high school. He goes to Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley at the time, doesn't play well. Then he gets unseated by Caleb Williams. And so Rattler then transfers to South Carolina. I thought he made some improvements there. The Saints take him in the mid-rounds going into 2024, and he got a little bit of action last year. He wins the job over Tyler Shuck, a 2nd-round pick for New Orleans in the 2025 NFL Draft. Just give us a Spencer Rattler scouting report. How did he look week 1?
Look, so Spencer Rattler, I mean, he is still that player that you saw going into Oklahoma that was like exciting. You're like, dude, you can throw the ball all over the yard. He can toss the pill. But the big thing for him is he is so like scrambled whenever pressure gets in his face. He reacts very, very poorly to pressure. And for what it's worth, credit to him in week 1, only got sacked once, but he is throughout his career had a major problem panicking as soon as the pass rush gets in. He also weirdly, this is like a thing to watch. He slips all the time. Like, I don't know if it's cleats, I don't know if it's turf, but he slips like crazy in the pocket. So you'll see him trying to move around, trying to get some space, and then he'll just like kind of fall and do something weird with his arm, and the ball just ends up on the turf. It's weird, but he's a player who did show that he grew from last year to week 1 this year. No touchdowns this year, no interceptions on the season so far. He was okay, but he definitely looked like he was a guy who you're like, yep, that was a 5th-round pick, solid backup, but I don't know if he's the answer. Still, jury's out on him, but I don't confidently believe in Spencer Rattler to be the guy, at least after the week 1 matchup. Sure, he did look better, but I mean, if you bring pressure, if you're able to create problems for the deep ball on the Rashid Shaheed route, because that's going to be one that they're going to target a lot, you will be able to beat this offense for the Niners defense, especially with talent like Nick Bosa, Jair Brown, Fred Warner. I mean, you have some really good players, Yamador Lenore. There are weapons on the defense that could cause some serious problems offensively for Spencer Rattler. I mean, he can be a good thrower of the football. He just hasn't been consistent for 4 quarters, and that's been the theme for him. He'll either start fast or end fast, but he just can't put it together for full 4 quarters.
You used a word there, weapons. And while the Saints offensive line does have some question marks, we'll get to that after our sponsor. weaponry-wise, they're in a pretty good spot. Rashid Shaheed, one of your favorite players.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think he's actually one of the more electrifying, underrated players across the NFL. We're talking about a speedster who can certainly get vertical. Alvin Kamara's been in the league for a long time. He's still a very successful player, and he can hurt you as a runner and as a pass catcher. Jawan Taylor had a really good week 1. You're hoping that Chris Olave can escape these concussion issues because when right, he is a really solid player too. So Spencer Rattler, he might get a little bit scatterbrained when pressure hits, but he does have some solid weapons to work with, and so too does Kellen Moore.
Yeah, and Juwan Johnson for the tight end. It was the #1 target for the receiving option for the Saints, so they expect him to get a lot of action, especially being one of the biggest guys that is a pass catcher on the roster. The Saints have a ton of speed. They have a lot of elusiveness. They have a lot of athleticism on the offense, but there's not a lot of size. So those 50-50 balls, those jump balls, those contested catches, a lot of those are either going to go to Juwan Johnson or Devon Vele because Chris Olave not that big. Rashid Shaheed not that big. Brandon Cooks not that big. So you have a lot of speed that can create space, but if the space is limited, they could really, really suffer in that regard.
Yeah, interesting position to watch there as far as getting some of that height at wide receiver going into the draft because Kellen Moore was able to use A.J. Brown in a really good way last year. Dallas Goedert, who has some size at that tight end spot. So depending on how New Orleans fares here in 2025, a tall, athletic wide receiver could be a big draft need for New Orleans going into the 2026 draft. All right, more to get to here on the show, and you can continue to see Trace Gerard's beautiful mustache coming up just around the corner. Let's get to our sponsor, though, Prize Picks. We appreciate them for making today's show possible. And this is the best daily fantasy sports app in the game, and you have to hop on board. Look, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is very simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. It's the best way to get action on sports in more than 40-plus states across America, and Prize Picks always puts their users first. As a consumer, don't you want to feel valued? Prize Picks values you. That's why millions of people have signed up. All withdrawals, fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Prize Picks also offers injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. So download the app today, use the code CLNS, get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Looking ahead to Sunday's matchup. Kickers are people too, and the Niners have a new kicker. Let's go Eddie Pinheiro. More than 1.5 field goals made with Mac Jones playing at quarterback over Brock Purdy. I think San Francisco can move the ball, but they might have to settle for some field goals. So I like Eddie P to show everybody what a good field goal kicker looks like for the Niners because we have Jake Moody PTSD. Ricky Pearsall, more than a half rushing and receiving touchdown. He was incredible in that week 1 bout against Seattle. And then the special here for week 2. Travis Kelce. I know he's trending toward being washed, but he's going to have more than a half receiving yards. Super Bowl 59 rematch. Let's go with more than a half receiving yard for Travis Kelce in this game. Get $50 when you play $5. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Show myself and Trace that you know ball and take your sports knowledge to Prize Picks. All right. The Saints offensive line, Trace. Not only is it a question mark, and it has been in recent years, also dealing with some injuries, especially to that left side, Trevor Penning. And then I always mess his name up, but I really liked him as a college football player out of Oregon State. Thales Fuaga, also banged up. So what's the overall offensive line outlook, and how are those players faring up health-wise?
So health-wise, Trevor Penning did not play in week 1. He's dealing with a turf toe injury. So
Brock
here
Purdy.
we are. Turf toe. It ruins week 2, I guess. But Thales Fuaga, he left the game in week 1 a little bit early with a hamstring or a knee injury. It was a leg injury for Fuaga, and he left the game and sat on the bench for pretty much the whole fourth quarter. Like Asim Richards, a player that the Saints traded for with the Cowboys, was the guy who filled in for Fuaga. So from left to right, if you don't see Fuaga or Penning, it would be Kelvin Banks Jr., the rookie left tackle that the Saints took in the first round out of Texas. And then you would have Dylan Radins as your left guard, a player the Saints signed in free agency. Eric McCoy, a really, really talented center, right in the middle. And then you have Cesar Ruiz, who I think personally is a major weak point on the Saints offensive line. And then at the right tackle position, if Fuaga can't go, it's going to be Asim Richards. All in all, for the offensive line, I thought that they had some really good moments for the week 1 matchup against the Cardinals. They have a good pass rush, too, with guys like Calais Campbell and what name's slipping me. They have a couple of different really talented pass rushers on the Cardinals
Jordan
defense.
Burch out of Oregon was one of the highest graded pass rushers in week 1.
Yeah, I mean, they had a
third-round pick.
Had a really, really good day rushing the passer. Again, only got 1 sack, which is nice, but they spent a lot of time in the Saints backfield. And for the 49ers, if they want to find some success against this Saints team, I am looking at Nick Bosa. Honestly, not even going for Kelvin Banks Jr. because he's been a really, really strong part of this team. One of the highest graded offensive linemen in the preseason. Had a really strong week 1 showing. I would actually send him over to the side of Asim Richards. Okay. A little bit more experience over there, but I don't think he's nearly as talented of a player as Kelvin Banks. So if I'm Robert Saleh, I'm the 49ers defense, I'm looking to target that side of the field. And I'm also, and I hate to say it, I love Kool-Aid McKinstry. He did not have a great day in week 1. So I think for the 49ers defense, if you want to win, beat them on the side of Asim Richards and send a lot of pressure in that regard. And I'm not going to say pick on Kool-Aid McKinstry because he still can make plays, but I don't think he had the greatest outing in week 1. I thought he gave up a lot of big plays. And for this offensive line, that's where it all starts for the Saints because if the pressure is there and the Niners can get home, then this is going to be a long 4 quarters for the black and gold. However, for the scarlet and gold, I think that there's a real opportunity to build some more defensive confidence and to get some more juju and that good mojo going that you need as you progress through the season, especially considering, love the Saints, we're not a good team. We're not a good roster. I don't think there's much of an expectation to beat the Niners, but this is a good opportunity for both teams. 1, to get a good litmus test for the Saints, but 2, the Niners to really establish some confidence and honestly beat up on a pretty poor roster.
You talked about a couple of familiar names going into the pre-draft process. We talked a lot about Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas, as a potential target for San Francisco if they wanted to bulk up the offensive line. Of course, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch didn't listen to me. Instead, they went with an edge rusher. Now, Michael Williams certainly fulfilling a need for San Francisco, but good to see Kelvin Banks off to a good start. I liked him in the pre-draft process. Another player who Niner fans are going to see in action in this game, who played for the Niners last year. I thought it was going to be a good value signing, but it wasn't. Isaac Yiadom. He's playing nickelback for New Orleans. Saints, keys to the game coming up here in just a bit from you. I want you to start racking your brain a little bit to get those Saints keys to the game because I'm going to relay my keys to the game from the Niner standpoint here, Trace, because I know you're working on a Niner Saints preview as well. Real quick, my 5 Niners keys to the game. Protect Mac Jones. He's not mobile. Brock Purdy was pressured on nearly 60% of his dropbacks in week 1. If the same happens to Mac Jones, could be a long day for this Niners offense because Mac is also turnover prone. And with him, he needs to avoid the back-breaking turnovers. He has been prone to turning the rock over, either throwing picks or fumbling the ball, especially when the defense is able to generate pressure. As a safety valve and an overall weapon, we saw Christian McCaffrey in week 1 have more than 140 all-purpose yards. It's going to be really important for CMC to play well again because Mac is going to have to rely on him with the Niners having question marks at wide receiver. Through the air, expect Kyle Juszczyk to get some looks at fullback and at tight end with George Kittle now on injured reserve. Ricky Pearsall was terrific in week 1. Has to be that number 1 wideout once again. And less than a week after signing him, Kendrick Bourne. Welcome back to the Niners. They're going to be calling your number. Lastly, can Robert Saleh's defense do it again? This is a unit that is counting on 5 to 6 rookies who have to play a lot of snaps for San Francisco's defense throughout 2025. And in week 1, this is the beauty of great coaching. They were well prepared, Robert Saleh got creative. He was aggressive. We saw some exotic looks from time to time. They were really good in stopping the run. They generated a pass rush when they needed to. They generated 2 turnovers. Can the Niners defense duplicate that performance with the youth movement on that side of the ball? So Trace, you don't have to go in order or have a necessary number for your keys to the game, but from the Saints sideline, what does New Orleans have to accomplish to pull off the upset? By the way, Niners were 7-point favorites after the Brock Purdy injury news, went down to 4.5, then 3.
So I'm going to give you 5 as well. You gave 5. I'm going to try to give 5
Let's go.
too. So the first thing for the New Orleans Saints, you got to limit the penalties. A lot of pre-snap issues, especially. The Saints had 3 false start penalties, 2 illegal shifts, and 2 offensive holding penalties. A lot of those are very controllable factors, so you have to control the controllables, and you have to stop shooting yourself in the foot, quite frankly. That's my number 2 point, is stop beating yourself. The New Orleans Saints have a penalty and a clock management problem. Kellen Moore at the end of the first half was really, really sloppy with his clock management, had 3 timeouts that he could have used to try to give his team some time to put points on the board late in the half, but he opted to not use them, gets the ball back with less than a minute, runs 1 play, and then heads into the locker room for halftime. I thought that it was soft. I thought that it wasn't very aggressive. And so the Saints need to find ways to not just stop the penalties, but to finish drives. They are their own worst enemy. They give up too many big plays. They cannot finish drives whenever they get to third down. They cannot get off the field on third downs. They'll have a lot of different opportunities for 3rd and long, 3rd and 8+ yards, even 3rd and behind the sticks, and they're still converting. So the New Orleans Saints need to find ways to stop shooting themselves in the foot. Another one, pressure Mac Jones. I know a key to victory for you, Chase, was to protect Mac Jones. A key to victory for the Saints is to bring the pressure. I looked at the PFF numbers, and when he's kept clean versus when he's under pressure is drastically different numbers. A 72.1 completion percentage versus a 38.9 completion percentage. It is drastically night and day difference. Another one, slow down the San Francisco defense, because like we talked about, it's pretty good extent. A lot of playmakers, a lot of great football players. Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, Bryce Huff, Fred Warner, D. Winters, Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, Jair Brown. Like, these guys can make a difference against this Saints team. And the last one is, to be honest, Spencer Rattler needs to push the ball down the field. And I think that the Saints offense needs to display more confidence in Spencer Rattler. And I'm not sure if that's Rattler having more confidence himself. I don't know if that's Kellen Moore having more confidence. But in week 1, only 4.65 yards per attempt for Spencer Rattler, which is not ideal.
No.
You want to see him pushing the ball downfield. So if you can have a little bit more confidence, have a little bit more trust in your offense, I think the Saints can start rolling in that regard. But they were very stagnant in week 1. They were not super inspiring. It was one of those games where going into the season, you knew it was going to be a long year. Coming out of week 1, it was like, I don't feel any more or less confident. I'm just not mad leaving this game. And that's a big difference for this year for Saints fans, is we're not leaving games frustrated and mad because Dennis Allen has a coaching just shambles and just absolute crumble under pressure. But now it's, okay, we're building something. We have something to look forward to. So the 5 keys, exactly what I said. Stop the penalties. Stop shooting yourself in the foot. Pressure Mac Jones. Slow down the Niners defense and push the ball downfield.
Last one before we let you go. New Orleans, such a fun city to visit. You're going on Bourbon Street. You're going on Frenchman Street. You'll get some great food, great music. What's cool about where the stadium is located, it's not far from some of the tourist attractions. And as we know, it is a very loud environment, very difficult place to play. You're a lifelong, diehard Saints fan. You've been to some games at the Superdome. What makes it such a difficult place to play at for San Francisco?
Man, you get a bunch of rowdy drunk Cajuns in an inside dome, it's going to get a little bit wild. I'm just going to go ahead and say. I mean, the energy in New Orleans is just one of those cities. It's just got aura.
It never sleeps.
It never, ever sleeps. There's always a party. There's always something to celebrate. Even despite 7-game losing streaks, you're still going to see parades up and down. So it's just a unique city. It's a really, really fun place. It's a really fun town. If you're going out to the game, get out to Bourbon Street, get out to Canal Street, do some shopping, do some eating, like some of the best food you will ever have. And if you get the opportunity, head over to Pato's, get a Hurricane, get some grub. They have really good food over there too. So, I mean, New Orleans is a special city. It's a really fun city. Have fun, be safe. But at the end of the day, it is a really, really raucous environment. Get a bunch of drunk Cajuns. It's going to get loud.
His last name is Gerard. It just screams New Orleans. So
Absolutely.
too does that mustache right there. You can tell the guy likes to have a really good time. If you made it until the end of this video, I want you to type real one down in the comment section. If you're a Saints fan and you're watching this show on the 49ers Report, thanks for hanging out. We all know Trizzy always brings the heat, does a great job over there. We'll both be live for our watch parties. Tap in and join us. I always like to say for the respective fan base, it's the best place to experience a game day outside of being at the actual game. And for Trace, I'm Chase. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Trizzy.